So a strange thing happened to me today. I called my mom. It's her birthday. And my kids spoke to her and, Grandma, happy birthday. What are you doing? All that kind of stuff. She's getting her kitchen redone, so she wasn't able to make herself a cake. So she's a little bummed about that. But what she was really bummed about is my brother. And I think a lot of us have gone through this. Back in March last year was when my families, my husband and I, and our kids, kind of our kids, had a falling out with my brother because something got taken out of context. Harsh words were texted, literally text, and they've never really spoken to us again, my brother and his wife and their kids. It's a no-go zone now. We're excommunicated from their family. They don't want to talk to us because they believe in the ideals of the left and we believe in the ideals of the right, and to them that's inconsolable. And my mom has been this middle ground protecting him for the last few months since March. And I feel like I'm in the right, and I'm sure he feels like he's in the right. The thing is, I'm open, and I think this is true for everybody on the right that I've spoken to. I'm open to talking about things, even if he's outraged by them. And even if I'm outraged by what he believes, I don't want to break up the family because of that. When I spoke to my mom today, it turns out that he had his last straw with her and is now not speaking to her. And so I don't think he even called her today for her birthday, because she had called him and invited him to a family reunion, and he says he doesn't want to go because there's too many conservatives on our side of the family and it will just make him and his wife uncomfortable. If all my family was leftists, the majority of them aren't, but if all of them were, I would find it pretty hysterical to go to a reunion with them and state my opinions and have arguments with them and just and discussions. But the left's not okay with that. And I see that across the board. They break up families, they stop friendships, and they take on extremism of their ideas. And so that's what I want to talk about today is I don't even know how the divide is continuing to grow, but the continued growth of the divide in our nation, you all see it. We see it every day online. I thought it couldn't get worse than it was, 9 months ago, but it is so much worse now. Hey everybody, I'm JJ Jeffrey, and this is Homestead Republic. And today we are talking about the unbelievably growing division in our country between the left and the right. As I said earlier, I just can't believe that it's still, I thought the divide was practically torn in half, but this paper is a lot longer than I expected. And you could just keep ripping it and ripping it and ripping it. And I don't know if there's any way that we're going to repair it. The divide between the left and the right is so substantial. I talked about my own family and how things have gotten out of hand. And it's just, I love family. I grew up with my parents. My parents are both still together. They're, over 40 years together. They were great parents. I got lucky. As people would say online, I'm privileged, right? Because of that commitment that they've kept with each other, I've learned to keep a committed relationship as well with my partner. And my husband, Rob, his family, his parents are also married over 40 years. Because of that background for both of us, I think it makes it a lot easier for us to recognize how important family is. And both his side and my side of the family find family extremely important. And so to have my brother tell my mom that he needs some no talking space from her and to tell her he can't speak with her anymore because their ideals are too different is mind-boggling to me. How did this happen? I thought I used to be, when I went away to college, I used to be the leftist, the hippie. And now it's certainly not me. What I'm trying to get at is the left has a certain way of seeing things and the right has a certain way of seeing things. And we can all see that divide online, if not within our own families. And the left has, instead of siding with America and the values, the patriotic values that America was founded on, they have decided to fall for the propaganda of empathetic suicide. Well, they don't see it as suicide, but a lot of them would give their lives to immigrants and minorities. And a lot of these people are white women, and some of them are white men, like my brother. And they think that we are so privileged, and the minorities are so disadvantaged that we need to give them everything the clothes off our backs in order to support them and give them better lives. Maybe I'm putting words in their mouth, but I think that they would agree with that. We should. And in my mind, and I think a lot of patriots, we feel that life should be based on merit. And yes, you may be born into any type of situation, and part of the excitement of life is figuring out how to get out of it. If you're born extremely poor, part of the amazing challenge of life is figuring out how to have a good life despite being born into poverty. It doesn't mean that you have to become a billionaire. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have a good life. It's about living a good life. Or you could be born extremely wealthy and be terribly sad and depressed. Wealth doesn't necessarily bring happiness. For a lot of people who are born into wealthy families, they are ignored or they are born into everything, and you can see the depression in their faces. You can see that they're trying to find the excitement in life by wearing clothes and being in front of the camera. And I think of Will Smith's son. That's who comes to mind. He looks like one of the most downright depressed rich people I've ever seen. And then you can meet people who don't have very much at all, but have their families and have food on the table, and they are happy and enjoying life. So this whole idea of being born into privilege and all that, I think is just a crock of shit. Don't tell that to the left, because they do not agree. If you're white, you are privileged no matter what, even if you're born into, a family of 10 with a single mother and she has no money. The family of 10 Black kids with a single mother is in a worse position. I had an argument online about this with somebody last night. And I said, well, the Black child can get a scholarship to go to college. because there are thousands of Black scholarships. But I looked this up. There are 0 white scholarships. That white kid, even though he's in the exact same situation, doesn't have the opportunity to go to college. Sure, there's tons of different scholarships. Maybe he gets good at football or a sport or this or that, but there's so much more opportunity handed to the Black community than the whites. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for that one, but come on. That scholarship example is, I could come up with other ones, but that is a nail in the coffin. It's absurd. Anyways, where I'm going with this is that the left and their immigrants that help them vote people into office despite being illegals, I'm sure they don't believe that, because they don't believe in a lot of the things that we on the right find as fact. They still believe that Renee Good didn't even hit the officer and had no part in that crime. And they still believe that many of them, even my brother, still believe that the Somali fraud is unreal. They think that we are making that up because we are racist against Somalis. I'm not racist against Somalis. I'm pissed that we found fraud. To not recognize or believe and plug your ears that is something that is actually happening, that all of those billions of dollars of theft are going on. It reminds me of COVID, when a lot of us said, no, do not get that shot. It's bad. COVID itself is not so terrible, and you're not going to die from it. And the numbers were, I believe, less than 1% of people who got it died. And they all had multiple issues before that. Just reminds me of the plugging their ears and saying, no, that's not fact, this is. And it's just happening all over again. And I don't see their side of the media. My brother's hooked on Reddit, even though he says he has no social media. He's hooked on Reddit, and that's where he's getting a lot of his information. And it's obviously a giant echo chamber. And that's where I wanted to go with this also. So why do we think this is happening to the left? And maybe some of the right? Because I think we're all being brought into extremism here. Why is the left... Because I'm about figuring out the whys and maybe finding solutions to the problems we're in. And one of the huge problems today is that the left has gone completely off its rocker. And they're talking about civil war, and they're blocking federal agents, and they're going out in the street with their children. Just being extreme. I'm amazed the Insurrection Act hasn't been enacted yet. But anyways, let me go through a few of the things that I think are reasons why the left has gone down this extremism path. And I'm not saying that the right hasn't gotten extreme. I would say I've even become more extreme in my views, because when the seesaw tips, you move further in one direction to keep it in balance. So when the left moves to this further extreme, us on the right are forced to also move into a further extreme. There's a point when that breaks. And I don't know when that's going to be. None of us do. But boy, does it feel close. I hope it doesn't happen. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But let's talk about a few of these reasons why I think the left has gotten so off base here and moved so far away from moderation, right? So number one, and this is one that I think a lot of us can point out, is big pharma. So many, especially women, are on pharmaceutical drugs. whether they're SSRIs or, the majority of women are on hormonal birth control. And I took that for years. I was just told that you need to take this, so here you go. From my personal experience, it really messes with your emotions. And it makes you more interested in maybe not as manly men. And it has a lot of side effects that make you feel disassociated with the world around you. And I finally stopped and everything evened out, and it was really life-changing for me when I realized how heavy those drugs really are. Now, if you mix those with SSRIs, I've looked into this. There are almost no studies looking into how those two mixed together, hormonal birth control and SSRIs, how they affect women's moods, emotions, and psychology. They've looked into them to make sure that you're not going to die if you mix the two of them. But they haven't looked into how our psychology is impacted. And let me tell you, I never took SSRIs, but there is glaring evidence around us that needs to be studied, and that is going to be a huge reason why these women aren't getting married, why they're not having children, why they're becoming so extreme. Now, I don't think my brother takes anything, so he doesn't fall into that category. I think his testosterone is extremely low, but I don't live near him. I can't sneak testosterone into his drink, right? My other brother and I have joked about doing that. He says that his testosterone is extremely high, but I have a feeling he's never really checked. He's also overweight. And a lot of these people on the left are, I'm not saying people on the right aren't, but having addictions to sugar, to caffeine, to seed oils, and eating unhealthy candy and food and all these kinds of things. Those can also lead to a change in your psychology. And I think that, and also, being vegan, he's not vegan, but those are all things that affect your moods, your emotions, and the direction you're going to go with your beliefs. I don't think there's a ton of conservative vegans. I'm sure there are some, but I think that they overwhelmingly sit on one side, while the carnivores sit overwhelmingly on the other. Everything's a generalization, but these are some ideas here for why we're seeing these giant swings in extremism. Another one, other than food and health and pharma, is social media. I think we can all see that. They had to go make their own platform, Blue Sky. I've never been on there. I'm not interested. But I had to leave Instagram because of how liberal it was a few years ago. And I think a year ago, maybe, or a little more, is when I got onto X. The big thing about social media is that we need to realign the reward system, right? Social media rewards outrage, rewards clickbait, rewards people freaking out on camera because everybody wants to see it and laugh and be shocked and outrage, right? And so I think a lot of the left makes these videos on TikTok or whatever platform, and they get reposted everywhere and they go viral, and there's just this boost of, yes, I'm right because so many people saw my video, and it makes them more extreme. Solutions here: we need to fix the incentive systems, right? It can't be that we are boosting people for morally wrong outrage. And of course, this isn't going to happen on Facebook. It's not going to happen on Blue Sky. It's not going to happen on Reddit. It's not going to happen on TikTok, because all of these platforms support this extreme leftist view. The only platform that I can think of, well, I mean, maybe Rumble too, but is X. X is the only platform that can do this social experiment of changing what our incentive system boosts. Maybe we can try boosting values, like American values and morality. And, you know, I'm not sure what would be the best thing that is going to keep people excited and interested, but also boost good values rather than this shitty outrage that is boosting the extremism of the left. I'm asking you, Elon, to look into this. Come up with a better way. It doesn't have to be the way everybody else is doing it. Come up with a better way that supports freedom, morality, and values. We need something like that, because the way it's working now is boosting the excitability of the left and making them, I've said it over and over, more extreme. Whether that means ex-naying their families or fighting ICE officers or dragging, who was it? I saw Cam Higby, is that his name? Anyways, dragging journalists off into the crowd. Who knows? I don't know what happened to him, but that was a scary video. If that was me, I'd be freaked out. Who knows? Who knows what could happen? Or even the death of Charlie Kirk. Was it because a bunch of people got together and they got a bunch of likes and boosts and reposts saying mean, terrible things about what they'd like to do to him, and then they finally decided, you know, this many people liked what I posted, so I'm right, I'm going to do it. I think that that's a huge problem and a huge area where we can make a change, or at least there are people who can make changes if they want to. Also, the echo chambers. Those are huge areas online where people continue to believe that their beliefs are actually something that people want to see, rather than just things that people want to see because it's shock and awe, not because they believe that what they're saying is right. Meanwhile, on the right, yes, we have our own echo chambers. It's true. We have our own extremism. It's true. We are shocked and disgusted most of the time when we're online. It's not this excitable outrage, I don't think. I think it's more just disgust that our system and our world and our laws are being broken to this extent. But you don't see the right going out and fighting in the streets. We're home at jobs. We're not out protesting because we like to see that our country is holding up law and order. That brings me to this other idea of why it feels like it's impossible to make amends with both sides, right? We have the left and the right, and they're so torn apart. And is there any way for us to bring it back together? And it would be very, very hard, and I don't see how it could work. Even with myself, when if I try to be a peacemaker, I can't bring myself to agree with the values of the left. And so I came up with, or I saw these moral claims, that 3 moral claims from the right and 3 moral claims from the left, and how can we bring them together? So here's the moral claims from the right. The rule of law matters. Yeah, it does. And that doesn't mean I think all laws are just. I think we have way too many laws these days and we need to cut them back. But the rule of law matters. Number 2, mass illegal immigration undermines our sovereignty. Yeah, it does. Our freedoms are taken from us because of this mass illegal immigration. Number 3, welfare fraud and abuse harm the nation and its citizens. 3 moral claims that the right stands pretty firmly on. I think those are all pretty right on. Now the left, here are 3 different first principles that they believe in. Number 1, human dignity matters more than legal status. Do I believe that? I almost instantly said no, but I mean, human dignity is important. Doesn't mean that you can break the law. So, no, I think the rule of law matters more than whether or not they are just allowed to stay here because of dignity. Maybe I mean, gosh. Then, number 2, immigration restrictions are unjust or rooted in prejudice. I am pretty sure most, if not all, of our laws do not restrict things due to the color of your skin or your nationality or race. But we have added immigration restrictions recently to make sure that certain people do not come into our country. And I agree with those. But again, their principle is that immigration restrictions are unjust or rooted in prejudice. Sometimes things are done for a reason. That's all I have to say. Number 3, welfare is moral duty of a wealthy society. Welfare is a moral duty of a wealthy society. Not when it takes away all our wealth. Not when we're not actually that wealthy because fraud has taken, I believe, trillions of dollars from us. No, I don't think so. It is not our moral duty. Not, at least governmentally. Now, to support your community through your church or your neighbor because your neighbor needs help, now that's a different story. I believe in welfare locally with people you know. But for the government to take part of my paycheck and give it out willy-nilly here and there to whoever they think deserves it, no. No, I don't think welfare is a moral duty of a wealthy society. But that's where the left differs then from my point of view. So we've got all of these people with different ideas, and where can we agree? I think one of the things that we can agree on from both sides is that our laws and policies are broken. Can we come to agreements on the direction we should go with them? Probably not. But I think that's someplace we can agree is that on the left and the right, we both agree that our immigration is fucked. And the problem is that their way of fixing it is just opening up the borders and letting everybody in and then giving everybody welfare because we're wealthy. And our idea is that sovereignty is important and that we don't want fraud and abuse to harm the nation and our citizens. I guess the left doesn't really care about the nation and its citizens. They just care about third world nations getting what they're owed because, this is stolen land and all. Meanwhile, whites are becoming the world minority. I believe they're at 9 to 11% of the races on Earth. So, yeah, we're a minority. You may not see it here. Recognize that the left doesn't recognize, but there is racism against white people. I don't see how you can look at that scholarship situation I spoke about earlier and not recognize that. How is it fair for people of one color to be allowed to have something and people of another color not be allowed to have something. I'll never step off that belief. There's no convincing me that that's an unfair policy. But it exists. So lastly, I mean, the left is talking about civil war. They're talking about revolution. A lot of the politicians, these fraudster politicians, are talking about civil war and revolution and standing up against the Fed, the federal government, and the federal employees, aka ICE. Is that treason? And I had some arguments with people online, and when I read about treason, it said it sounds like it's treason to me, but apparently there's some theologists out there who've decided that it's only treason if you're siding with another nation, not if you're forming a revolution. I still don't see, when I read the Constitution, I don't see that it says anywhere about it being only if you side with another nation. It says enemies. But I think it's treason. I think a lot of us think it's treason. But the argument is that it's not, because it's only treason if we find that they're siding with China, and China's trying to take us down, or Canada, and Canada's trying to take us down, which it seems like both are kind of trying to make an alliance here. We'll see. Last week, I made a video about history, and I wanted to go into that a little bit just to end the episode on this, that when we look at what the outcome of a fourth turning looks like, whether this is a civil war or a world war or some other financial crisis that occurs to bring about this fourth turning, the world changes afterwards. We're not going to go back into the same thing that we used to have. Not that I'd necessarily want to. I mean, there's great things about it, but things needed to change and be fixed. Unfortunately, the direction can go in 3 different ways. It's either going to be authoritarian rule, collective rule, communism, great, socialism, or my favorite, civic nationalism. And civic nationalism is a tiny window that we probably won't hit, but the United States has hit it before. So it is possible, but with the divide we have right now, I'm thinking that it's going to be really hard. But either way, when talking to an AI bot, I found, or it suggested, it predicted, it says it's not a prediction, but it predicted that it's going to go the way of either, it's not going to go the collectivist way, which, I mean, I guess is good because I don't want that, but it is going to either go, and it says number 1, most likely, is soft authoritarian technocracy. Shit. I don't want that. But that's looking like the trajectory. The other way is a more nationalist authoritarianism. I also don't want that. And the last way is, and the slimmest percentage chance, is that civic nationalism, where we have more liberty. We hold on to more of our liberties. Maybe next week I'll get into how we can come together to make that choice rather than, authoritarian technocracy or some other authoritarian form of government, because I don't approve of that. But that's what AI is predicting that our future holds. And I just want more freedom, I want to be one of those people that's just left alone to make my money and live my life and raise my children and have some cattle and some sheep and have a garden and support my neighbors if they need help and live that kind of a life. But instead, I don't go out in public very much because I do everything here. I raise my kids here. I get most of my food here. There's a few things we still get at the grocery store, so we know our grocers pretty well. We go and do things at the local pool and go on hikes and things like that, but we don't go downtown often. And so we went just the other day because the National Western Stock Show was in Denver, so we decided, we got to go out and do something random like that. So we drove down there and we checked out the sheep, which was fun for the kids and us, but I was in shock. We were certainly the minority in the place. In Denver. I guess there's been so much immigration to Denver. I didn't know because I haven't been there really since I was in college. So I don't know, over a decade ago. I was shocked at how it feels to be a minority. How to look around and see everybody speaking Spanish. I mean, I grew up in Southern California. Lots of people spoke Spanish, but it was a different vibe. It was a different vibe than how I grew up, because people were friendly and wanted to be a part of America and wanted to take on our values. At least all my friends who were Mexican when I grew up, that's how their grandparents and their parents were. Today, it was like they walked right past us as if we were ghosts. People are so weird now. They don't talk to each other or have conversations and talk about not knowing that other people have bubbles. I mean, geez. They about sat on my daughter when they sat on the grandstands to watch some sheep shearing. She was scared. I don't blame her. I mean, geez, it was as if we weren't there, how close they got. And then the kids are kicking us in the back. And I mean, kids do what they're going to do. And then there were young children there young girls wearing their Muslim hijabs. And I'm just don't think that that's the right thing to do to your daughters. But I don't know. I was shocked looking around and seeing where I was in Denver and how I felt like I was in another country. I mean, other than the people who were showing their sheep, they were young white kids, but everybody else there pretty much felt like they didn't want us there in our own place. It's so weird. I don't know. I just felt really unwelcome, and my kids did too when we talked to them afterwards. Anyways, that's the end of the show, everybody. I hope you keep your hearts brave and your homes bright, and maybe we can come together to figure out how to create a better future after this event that's boiling up around us.